Today I want to talk about trauma responses, specifically the responses that we have around the traumatic death of our loved one, especially if you were there or you're the one that found them, and what that actually does to your body, your brain, and what that looks like. If you're new here, my name is Molly. I am a life coach and a grief mentor. I began working with grieving women after the death of my daughter, when I realized the support is just not there. Grief is taboo. Society as a whole doesn't want to think about it, and it turns out our friends and loved ones can't handle it either. I felt so alone and confused, and I met so many women who felt the same. So my goal is to help us realize that we are not alone and we are not crazy, and to help us help others support and love us. Today I'm sharing another clip from my chat with Jenny, who is another grieving woman who is also studying to be a counselor so that she can also help other people who are grieving. In this clip, we talk about trauma responses around death, the fight or flight response, PTSD, as well as triggers. I hope something in this video today is helpful for you and helps you know that you're not alone and makes you feel less crazy. And if you do find it helpful, I would appreciate a thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed to my channel, to do so now, and also share it with anyone that you know who might need to hear this message too. So let's talk about trauma responses.
Yep.
And go.
So are we talk about like actual emotional responses or changes in the brain? Like,
Let's all of it.
I should have
Let's
written
see.
flashcards.
Right. Well, we'll flesh it out.
Okay.
So like immediately when someone learns of the death of a loved one, whether it's being notified about it or you're there with them when it happens, like the immediate process that the brain goes through, what does that look like?
Okay, it's definitely fight or flight. Your brain just, it goes into what's called the reptile brain mode. Like say this is your brain normally, and this is the upper layer, which is the higher functioning parts of the brain, which, you know, help you with language and cognition and all the day-to-day things that we do. And once you go into fight or flight, you flip your lid. Like now you're functioning from the reptilian part of your brain, which is only responsible for like breathing and very basic functions, because like everything else just, it shuts down.
So it's survival mode.
Yes.
Like you literally go into survival mode. Your brain is literally just trying to keep you alive.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't speak for anybody else. I'm just thinking about how I felt like immediately. Like my mom saw me right afterwards and she said like all the blood was drained from my face. She said even my lips looked blue and it looked like I was having a hard time breathing. And you can't, like your brain is not capable of comprehending this great tragedy and doing all these bodily systems at once. And some people do just like fall to their knees or on the ground or whatever. They're not trying to be dramatic. It's just their body has shut down. They're not functioning.
Actually, that made me think when I got the phone call that my dad had died unexpectedly. I remember I fell to the ground. I remember that happening, and I remember being inside myself thinking, what are you doing? Like I couldn't get myself up off the floor. I wanted to, but at the same time I was like, I don't know what this response is. But then at the hospital with Cassie, like there was, even though like I knew what was really happening, but I couldn't accept it. I remember not being able to stand up. I don't know, like the ability to stand, it just was gone. And I remember like people trying to pick me up and I was just like, no, just let me go.
Yeah. Well, see, like my heart is just like pounding now, even thinking about it. Like your brain starts reliving that, and especially when you've tried not to think about it for so long. And it is part of PTSD when you start reliving it, and your brain and body starts having the same reactions that you did at that point in time. And like with the flashbacks, one thing I found out was because it was cold weather when it happened last year, I found out that's when flashbacks would intensify, was when it was cold outside and the atmospheric conditions were the same basically. And I learned, it was really strange. I was in class one day, and we were watching a video, something about alcohol abuse, and the weather was exactly the same outside. And it started coming on, and my feet were so cold, and I had these thin socks on, and I was like, okay, I've got these thicker socks out in the car. I'm gonna go get them and put them on. And something about the way I looked, I guess my professor was like, we need to turn up the heat in here. And so then once I got warm, I was okay. And it was the strangest thing. And like after that, I was like, okay, I'm going to wear wool socks the whole winter now.
Right.
And it helped. And it might have been just tricking my brain, but it's still, you learn these coping mechanisms that help you get through the day.
But even now, after how much time has passed, realizing that there are still environmental triggers along with other triggers that are going to come up. They're like, they sneak up on you and just punch you in the face.
Yes.
And this is something that others, people who are not experiencing grief, can't wrap their mind around. Like there's a stigma that it happened and you should be back to normal or over it by now, not recognizing that not just anniversaries and dates and holidays and other things like kids graduating from high school, and you think, well, they're not going to be here for graduation or like everybody else or something like that. But like you said, just something as simple as cold weather brings it all back for you.
Oh, what you were saying about environmental triggers, it made me think of a book I just read. It's by my bed. I don't want to go grab it right now, but I'll forget it later when we take a break or something. This guy, he lost his son at a month old. And 10 years later, he was out in the yard giving his dog a bath, and just all of a sudden, he just started crying and was doubled over on the grass. And he was like, I don't understand, what just happened. Yeah. I wasn't even thinking about him. Yeah. Why am I having this response now? And then he realized some time later that it was the smell of the shampoo he was using for the dog that was the same as some kind of antiseptic that they used in the hospital with his son, and it triggered him.
Yeah.
And like things like that you can't plan for.
No, you can't prepare or anticipate what thing is going to be a trigger even. Yeah. Again, I really hope that you heard something today that was helpful for you. If you want to check out more of my videos on other topics around grief, there'll be some in the cards above and in the description below. And be sure, if you're subscribed, to tap that bell so you get notified every time I put out a new video. Let me know in the comments any future videos you would like for me to make. Until next time, bye y'all.